At this point in our look into various religions, we have spent time describing pagan religious beliefs based on animism and polytheism, and then we've turned to the East and uncovered the basics of Hinduism and Buddhism. This session combines a couple of belief systems or religions also from the East, and they're called Taoism and Shintoism. Now, the first of these, Taoism, came from China. The second, Shintoism, comes from Japan. Now, China also in the past has followed something that many people are familiar with called Confucianism, but that's more of an ethical system than a religion. But just a few comments on that. Confucius was born about 550 BC. He wrote something called the Analects, which was a collection of sayings and ideas. He believed people were basically good. Just put them in the right environment and all will turn out fine. He was not really concerned with a deity. His focus was simply on how to get along in this world among all men. Confucius taught an ethic for society, how to treat everyone. Things will be good, he says, if this ethic is followed. Honor all authority. Never go against the authority, whether a father or an emperor. He believed in societal rituals to achieve harmony. Now, Taoism has been connected to the philosopher Lao Tzu, who around 500 BC supposedly wrote the main book of Taoism called the Tao Te Ching. There is little evidence that he existed, though. The book was attributed to him for cultural and political reasons. Lao Tzu is sometimes understood as the image of the Tao, or a god, and given legendary status. The Tao is a little hard to define, but it is sometimes understood as the way of the universe. Taoism teaches that all living creatures ought to live in a state of harmony with the universe and the energy that is found in this universe. Now, if you ask what is this energy in the universe, Taoism says it's called the Qi. That's the energy present in and guiding everything in the universe. Martial arts are based on this. They seek to have the Qi flow through the body. Taoism itself has no creator God. A wise man simply seeks to order his life in tune with the Tao. Taoists believe in spiritual immortality, where the spirit of the body does join the universe after death. All matter has, and you've probably heard of this, yin and yang. The yin is the negative or the feminine side of things. The yang is the positive or the masculine side. And order in the universe, according to Taoism, is only achieved when they are perfectly balanced. The aim is to achieve harmony with the Tao. These ideas represent matching pairs, such as light and dark, hot and cold, inaction and action, which work together toward a universal whole. Yin and yang show that everything in the universe is connected, that nothing makes sense all by itself. If you ever watch the Star Wars movies, Star Wars seems to be influenced by Taoism. The individual decides how to use the force, which can be used for either good or evil. Acupuncture is also part of this, as it works on the concept of the yin and the yang. It gets the flow working right to create equilibrium. Yoga also incorporates Taoism. Some environmentalism is based on Taoism in the idea of finding balance in nature and worship of the creation, referred to as Gaia, rather than the Creator. So the creation over the Creator. There's another practice called Feng Shui, also coming from Taoism. It means the way of wind and water. Feng Shui is a method of balancing this yin and yang and improving the flow of qi, that's that energy, by arranging furniture, decorations, buildings, and even whole cities in a beneficial way. Because the ancient Chinese people believed that arranging things to create positive qi would ensure good health, improve interpersonal relationships, and bring luck and prosperity. Many feng shui rules are about what items to place near or far away from doors and windows, because qi can enter and leave through those openings. The easiest way to change feng shui in a room is to add or move one of the 5 elements. Those elements are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. Okay? Move them around as necessary. The belief is that mixing, combining, or subtracting these items can improve the flow of a positive qi. Now, Christian writer C.S. Lewis used the word Tao in his book, The Abolition of Man. Many have wondered why he did so, since it did not come from the Christian tradition. He explained that he was trying to use a term that was not common to Western society, at least, because it was another way of referring to the Western concept that we call natural law. In the book, here's what Lewis had to say. He says, "This thing which I have called for convenience the Tao, and which others may call natural law or traditional morality or the first principles of practical reason or the first platitudes, is not one among a series of possible systems of value. It is the sole source of all value judgments. If it is rejected, all value is rejected." He added to that, "The effort to refute it and raise a new system of value in its place is self-contradictory. There has never been, and never will be, a radical new judgment of value in the history of the world." And he goes on to say, "The rebellion of new ideologies against this Tao is a rebellion of the branches against the tree. If the rebels could succeed, they would find that they had destroyed themselves." Therefore, the title, The Abolition of Man. The human mind, he goes on to say, has no more power of inventing a new value than of imagining a new primary color, or indeed of creating a new sun and a new sky for it to move in. So Lewis's use of the term Tao draws upon the idea. It expresses that there is a way in the universe that is right, something actually set up by God. Lewis would then go on to say that he hoped by using the term that he could more persuasively argue that there are universal concepts that apply throughout the world and in its various civilizations. To be clear, Lewis was not endorsing or espousing Taoism as a religion. He was merely incorporating the idea that there is a way of the universe. And for him, that way was set up by the Christian God. Now, what about Shintoism? Where does it fit in? Shintoism literally means the way of kami, which is generally understood as sacred or divine power, specifically the various gods or deities. It came into use in order to distinguish indigenous Japanese beliefs from Buddhism, which had been introduced into Japan in the 6th century BC. And we're going to see there's a lot of crossover between Shintoism and Buddhism, at least in common practice, especially among the Japanese. Shinto has no founder, no official sacred scriptures in a strict sense, and no fixed dogmas. In other words, you cannot say, here is our creed, here is what Shintoism is all about. It consists of traditional Japanese religious practices, as well as the beliefs and life attitudes that are in accord with these practices. So Shinto is more readily observed in the social life of the Japanese people and in their personal motivations than in any kind of a formal belief or a philosophy. It remains closely connected with the Japanese value system and the Japanese people's way of thinking and acting. Now, Shinto does have some key concepts, though. Concepts such as purity, harmony, family respect, subordination of the individual before the group, which have become parts of the Japanese character, whether the individual claims a religious affiliation or not. So what we're seeing here is something that is probably primarily cultural for most people in Japan. The peoples of ancient Japan had long held animistic beliefs. They had worshipped divine ancestors. They had communicated with the spirit world via shamans, or what we in colloquial term might call witch doctors or whatever. Certain natural phenomena and geographical features were given an attribution of divinity. Most obvious amongst these are the sun goddess and the wind god. Rivers, mountains, especially important in Japanese thinking, none more so than Mount Fuji, whose name derives from Fuji, the god of the volcano. In Shinto, gods, spirits, supernatural forces, and essences govern nature in all its forms. They are thought to inhabit places of particular natural beauty. Evil spirits or demons are present in this belief, but they're mostly invisible. Some are envisioned as giants with horns and 3 eyes. Their power is usually only temporary, and they do not represent what we've called an inherent evil force. Some spirits of dead animals can even possess human beings, the worst being the fox. These individuals must undergo an exorcism by a priest. Buddhism and Shinto found enough mutual space to flourish side by side for many centuries in ancient Japan. Sometimes images of Buddhist figures were incorporated into Shinto shrines, and some Shinto shrines were actually managed by Buddhist monks. Of the 2 religions, Shinto was more concerned with life and birth. It showed a more open attitude toward women and was much closer to the imperial house of Japan, the dynasty that ruled. The 2 religions would not be officially separated, Buddhism and Shintoism, until we got to the 19th century. There are some concepts in Shinto that I mentioned in passing, but I'll go back to those briefly. They're purity, which refers to both physical cleanliness and the avoidance of disruption, and for spiritual purity as well. Another concept is harmony. Harmony needs to exist in all things, must be maintained against an imbalance. Now notice this kind of sounds a little bit like Taoism. It might have been influenced by Taoism. There's a key concept of procreation and fertility. The family, ancestral solidarity are prominent. Shinto also believes in subordination of the individual to the group, and it reverences nature. The soul of the dead, according to Shintoism, can influence the living before it joins with the collective kami of its ancestors. Now, people might raise the question about what about the Japanese emperor when there was an emperor in Japan? Was he divine? Well, the Japanese concept of the divinity of the emperor is often misunderstood by Westerners. Neither the emperor nor most of his people ever thought that the emperor was a god in the sense of being a supernatural supreme being himself. From the 6th century onwards, it was accepted that the emperor was descended from the gods, was in contact with them, and often inspired by them. This didn't make him a god himself, but rather imposed on him the obligation of carrying out certain rituals and devotions in order to ensure that the gods looked after Japan properly and ensured its prosperity. The divine status of the emperor did become a general assumption during World War II, but mostly as a vital element of the Japanese patriotic understanding of themselves as a nation, rather than a theological reality. Yet when the emperor at that time, Hirohito, went on the radio to declare that the fighting was over and the war was done, the people followed his decree. We have now covered most of the primary religions of the East Asian world: Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism. Now we turn to the 3 great monotheistic religions: Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. We will begin with Judaism in our next session.